As everybody's coming in, welcome to our penultimate capacity building seminar, module number 4. We have one more next week. This one is about building the development team, and I think it is time to roll. Today, as a part of our building our development team, we've got a number of people here to talk to you about what, excuse me for a second. Okay. It's always the challenge of working at home. They're going to talk to you about the team members that every developer needs to be a part of their project. As we all know, the developer is the person who takes the majority of the financial risk on the project and gets to choose everything. You're the developer, the buck stops with you. You set all the project parameters, you select the site, you track the budget, you run the timeline to the extent that you can, working with CDA guidelines, and importantly, you hire all the consultants, and we have a sampling of the people whose fields you're going to need on the project. You also get the majority of the profit from the project. Here's a slide showing kind of a selection of the people who you will need. You have designers, representing designers. We have Rob Wagstaff, who is an architect who works with CDA quite a bit for a variety of clients. You have contractors. Contractors are very busy. We could not get one to speak to the group today, but that's the part that I think everybody is most familiar with. Financial folks. In our group today, we have a dispersing agent and someone from the title company, who is in the next thing, real estate, the title company, and a realtor. So as the developer, you choose all of these folks. They all work for you. So representing a variety of these fields, we have 4 panelists today. We have from a dispersing company we work with a lot, Accurate Dispersing. We have David Rhodes. We have Wendy Cromer from Security Title, Rob Wagstaff, architect from Urban Works, and Gail Brown, realtor. And we're going to, each of the groups of panelists are going to do a short discussion about what they do in the project, how they interact with other project members, and what questions you need to be asking the people that you plan to hire. So I am going to stop sharing, and I'm going to hand it off to Wendy and Dave.
Okay. Am I good to share my screen?
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
I can see the screen.
Great. Dave, I will let you lead and go first. And you just let me know when you need me to flip through for you. Okay?
Technology is great when it works, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Rhodes. I'm the general manager for Accurate Dispersing. Wendy Cromer, who's our general manager for Security Title, is going to speak after me. I'm going to go first. Security Title is our sister company, same ownership, so it makes it very easy. We communicate with each other on a daily basis, and it makes it very easy for us to work with the title company. One of the things when you choose a property and you're getting ready to start on the project, you'll choose your general contractor, and then we're always very hopeful, and we enjoy working with CDA, that you will choose the Security Title is your title company, and Accurate Dispersing is the dispersing arm or the dispersing agent for Security Title. One of the things that we will do for you as the developer is we will be your project administrator. And when I say project administrator, what we're going to do is we're going to track everything according to the detailed budget from you, which includes the general contractor's detailed budget. And we'll make sure to kind of do all the blocking and tackling behind the scenes, which is cutting all of the checks and collecting all the lien waivers. Because you're going through security title, a third-party dispersing agent is required. After the downturn in 2008, 2009, the insurance underwriters came back to all of the title agencies and said they needed to have third-party dispersing. So we are an independent dispersing company, and there are times you may see us also doing projects for other title companies in the St. Louis area. So we do a lot of dispersing for other title companies too. So you may see us not just with security title, but with other title companies also. And a lot of you who may be on the financial side will deal with Karen Youngstrom or Kathy Christensen in our office, who are our lead dispersing officers from a residential and commercial scenario perspectively. So what I want to talk about today is that I mentioned that you're required to use a third party to disperse on the projects. One of the things we do is we pay all the subcontractors and suppliers directly, and we track everything according to a budget. After we pay, before we hand out the checks, we collect all the lien waivers that we need. Not only the lien waivers from those subcontractors, but more importantly, the third tier. So the general contractor would be the first tier, the subcontractor would be the second tier, and the material suppliers are the third tier. Those are the ones that we really, really want to focus on, because we want to make sure that the subcontractors are paying their material suppliers. So we require unconditional lien waivers or paid receipts if they've gone to one of the big box stores, just to prove that the material suppliers have been paid. So that's one thing that we will certainly do for you is track all that. We keep all that. We're paperless, so we can send you the backup for that. If you should need it for any, if you have to send any reports in, we have all the backup for all the checks and everything, the supporting documentation. Here on the screen you see that some of the forms that are required. A budget change request form is just to make sure that you as the developer and the general contractor have signed off on any budget changes. And a budget change could be moving money within the category, because as we all know, a budget can be put together up front and things can materially change as you move throughout the project. So you may have some savings in one area and things have gone up in other areas, and that would just be the way you can move money within the budget. If in fact there is a change order that increases the budget, we want to make sure everybody has signed off on that one also. And for those of you who are familiar with what's going on in the construction industry right now, almost everything has gone way up. And when I say way up, lumber has gone up well over 100%. In some situations, it's gone up 200%, and steel has gone up, appliances. So any number of things that you would put into your construction project, all those things have gone up from a price perspective. The next screen, we'll talk about this payment request form, and this just helps us here in the office from a dispersing standpoint, make sure that we track the budget according to how you want us to track the budget. And when I say that, you would prepare this form and send it in to us and list all the payees. So if we go back to the original, we don't need to go back now, but the first screen that popped up, one of the things that was important to see there was that it was, they showed about architects and engineers, and we're going to, we want to pay them because architects and engineers are lienable. They have lien rights, and so we want to make sure, accurate being we want to make sure we pay them. So you would list, for example, on here, you could list a payee as the architect, the engineer, and then the general contractor, and the general contractor would also provide to us this same type of payee list. that would list out all the subcontractors and or suppliers that need to be paid. And the important part on here is not only the dollar amount of what we're going to be paying them, but the budget category. In our system, and I'll show you this here in a few slides, you have access to our system, and I can talk about that in a minute. But it is important for you to also tell us here whether or not it's a final payment or a partial payment, because at the end of the project, we want to make sure we have final lien waivers from everybody that has been on the project and that we have paid. So we lean on you to tell us when it's a final or a partial payment. On the next slide, just kind of shows well, let's go to the next one. From CDA's perspective, if we want to talk about the draw process, what occurs is that the general contractor will send in, and we'd like to have them send it to us at the same time they send it to you for approval. But we, being accurate, we cannot move forward without your approval. So we would like to get the general contractor's pay application at the same time you do, so that we can start working through that, make sure that everything is still within budget, which is something very important that we keep an eye on at all the times. We also have inspectors that will come out, take pictures of your project, and upload that to our system. Our inspectors are our eyes on the ground. They give us the opportunity to, when we receive a pay application from the general contractor requesting funds to be paid on the foundation or rough-in plumbing or rough-in electric, for example, it allows us, our inspector takes pictures, and they also give us a percentage of completion on the individual budget line items, so that we here in the office know that the work has been completed for a specific pay application, because it's extremely important. We are only going to pay for completed work and delivered materials. So we don't want to pay deposits. We don't want to have your money sitting out there. Our inspectors are not architects or engineers, so I want to make sure that that's clear. They're not going to be going and looking at the project from a quality perspective. They're not going to compare plans and specs to what's been done on site. What they're doing is more from a quantity perspective, giving us a percentage of, okay, the foundation is complete. I'm not saying that it's done correctly. That's really more for, when you have to go get a permit to move forward with another piece of the project. Our inspectors are just giving us a quantity percentage of completion, so it gives us an idea of what we could pay out based on what's been completed on the job. And then once you send us the funds and we receive those funds, and in some cases bank funds are required too. So we may have, I know there are a number of situations where we could have up to 5 or 6 different funding facilities on certain draws. So we'll request all those funds after we receive CDA's approval, and then we print checks on a daily basis. So if we receive the funds, all of the funds required, by 11 o'clock on any given day, we'll have the checks ready. We print checks at noon every day, and they'll be ready that afternoon by 2 o'clock. And we will notify all of the people who are going to receive a check. And when I say notify, we'll either email or mail to them a notification saying, here is the amount of your check and what do we need from you. And then as far as when they turn things around to us, if we ask them for lien waivers, they can either email those, fax those, or mail those to us. And surprisingly, we still do get a lot of faxed lien waivers. And then they can come in our office and pick up checks. They can fill out a lien waiver when they get here for their check, and then they can pick it up, or we can mail it to them. So I had mentioned before about our access to our system. Each of the contractors, the general contractors, can have access to our system. Some of the contractors like to get onto this online system and actually put in their own, the invoices to be paid. Some of them send them to us to go on and do it, but they also like it because they can print off reports, and these are reports that we can send to you. The first one under the report there is a category report. That's a budget category report, and it would show the exact budget that you've submitted and the general contractor has submitted. We're going to have that in our system, the exact same line items, and it would show what was the original budgeted amount, what's been dispersed, and what's still remaining. And the key with the budget, again, is just to make sure that we stay within the budget, and if there's anything that we see where it gets out of budget, over budget, we would make sure to contact you. And then there are a few other reports that we can print off, but it also allows the general contractor to see how we're doing against the budget. They can see the inspection pictures, and they can also see when checks are ready. So the next slide is some of the benefits of having us pay the subs and suppliers, and I had mentioned this before. It just makes sure that we're collecting all of the correct lien waivers. It takes that, it allows us to be that project administrator for you. Well, we're not going to release any check until you tell us to release a check, and we also make sure to collect the lien waivers, and we'll just any other information that we need. And then there also may be some reimbursements where we have to reimburse you as the developer, and so we can very easily do that and get that back to you. And that's what I have. Are there any questions associated with? I walked through that pretty quickly, but any questions associated with the dispersing side?
Lisa, are you okay with me to move forward with title, or did you want to stop for questions?
Wendy, this is Bill. I think you go ahead with questions. Or I'm
Okay.
sorry, with the presentation.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Dave is a partner in crime of mine, so I appreciate him leading off. My name's Wendy Cromer, and I work with Security Title. And I've been in the title business for many years and done a little bit of everything as far as closing and examining and production. But as developers and clients that are working with CDA, you're going to determine what CDA inventory is available, what properties are out there. CDA is going to acquire or get their hands on these properties through various ways, whether it's unpaid taxes, donations, tax sales. They're going to come into the inventory to CDA and for you to select or choose from as a potential project for you to keep. You're going to go through, look at that inventory. It's important to know, though, that once a property is listed in the inventory area, that CDA has actually started the due diligence process somewhat with us to make sure that the properties are eligible to be sold. But once you've decided this is the property we want to work with, and you're going to secure an option to purchase and potentially renovate this property through CDA, CDA then sends the paperwork to us as the title company so that we can get started on our end. The title company is looking at doing a geographic search of the land records where the property is located to make sure that you're not going to experience any hiccups down the road when you go to sell that property or, own it. we receive a contract. In addition to the paperwork, we perform a search of the public records. So we're searching everyone that's had an ownership interest. I kind of acquaint it to the property telling a story. I'm a little bit of a title nerd, so I really enjoy titling. But every piece of property that is bought and sold in St. Louis has a story to tell. When there are transfers or the property changes hands, there are deeds that are recorded in the recorder of deeds office. And those, when you put all of those pieces of the puzzle together, they should form a story or your title commitment, and it should make sense. There shouldn't be any gaps in the ownership. There shouldn't be any reason someone missing out of what we call the chain of title. Those are the things that we're doing behind the scenes once we get that paperwork in from CDA. Once the story of that property is assembled into a title commitment format, our closer and our coordinator, typically the CDA files go through our Clayton office. Jessica McCullough, Karen Taylor, Michelle Migliazzo, and Anne Marie Moriarty handle the account. And the coordinators will typically start out working on the file to make sure that if there are some things that popped up on the commitment that are going to create any potential delays, or there's some glitches or things that need to be addressed, problems on the property, they're going to work to clear up those issues and communicate with you as to these are the things that we see that might be an issue. Maybe we have to get an old release, or we have to get something to get to the closing finish line. Some of the other things might be, regular liens, unreleased liens. Maybe there's unpaid taxes. Maybe there's forestry issues or other issues that we have to work through to make sure that once you take ownership of this property and start investing your own money and renovation money, that there's nothing that's going to be in the way to prevent your ownership and potential interests. We also work to coordinate with your lender, whatever lending agency that you're working through. We're going to kind of be a funnel for everyone to dump the information in, and we assemble it and get it to the closing table. So your bank's going to communicate with us, CDA's communicating with us, the realtors communicating with us, and we're making sure that everyone gets paid that's owed money. All the liens that are out there are taken care of and released. And then we also coordinate with the dispersing company, with Accurate, to make sure that, dispersing agreements are obtained, and that they're in the loop on what's going on the file. What you're going to find is that there are various funding sources when you deal with a CDA property. It could be a bank and CDA, a credit union CDA. You're going to have different funding sources for these transactions. So you're going to have dispersing agreements and deeds of trust, in addition to transfer deeds and things like that that are going to be executed at the time of closing. Sometimes there might be a little bit of time required to get all of the ducks in a row, literally, so that you can move forward with your closing. So you need to make sure that you don't have unrealistic expectations on your timing. That's where your coordinator and closer can assist you to, just let you know that, closing in 2 days might not be realistic. Maybe it needs to be, a week or so later, or, whatever. And they're going to use your contract to help guide you through that process.
Wendy, we do have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Can one continue the title insurance after the closing for the owner's title insurance? How do those things feed into each other? Because do y'all do both of the closings in a CDA project? Do you do the first closing for us and then the second closing for the owner?
Typically we do, yes. And so we can ensure, I mean, we're doing some groundwork for CDA, but then yes, we absolutely can ensure the end buyer as well. And it's important to know that there's two types of title insurance products available. There's an owner's policy and a lender's policy. So the owner's policy is tied to the ownership of the real estate. So if CDA, when CDA becomes the owner of the property, then they are the ones getting insured. But once that end buyer, the developer, takes title, then they are the ones that are going to want to have an owner's policy of title insurance. The loan policies of title insurance are tied directly to whoever is lending money on the project. And they diminish over time as the loan is paid off, and once it's released, it's no longer valid. But your owner's policy of title insurance is good for as long as you or your heirs own that property. And it's typically issued for the amount that you pay for that property. Now, I do know that sometimes your developers are buying the property relatively low, and then they're going to invest funds and increase the value after they've done their project. So we can also talk about, we can also work with you to endorse your policy at the end of the project to increase the value of that policy to match the new appraised value once the project's completed. Some things does that answer your question, Lisa, for everything?
I think that kind of gets to what she was looking for, was that, how that process works through it, because we do have two closings. We have the transfer from CDA, and then we have the other transfer. So I think that covers it.
Okay, perfect. Some of the things that we're looking at is, most of the CDA projects are going to be rehab or new construction. Things to consider, and as you're going through, and Dave kind of touched on when you're creating your budget, the one thing our underwriters are always looking at is if the footprint of the house is changing, make sure that when you are crafting your budget for the project, that you include a foundation survey and an as-built survey, because your lender is going to typically want survey coverage. And as a title agency, the underwriters don't necessarily want to give survey coverage unless they know that the development is within the survey lines and the boundary lines of the property, and not, encroaching or anything like that. So just make sure that you are including that in your costs. You also need to understand that you may need a land use restriction agreement to be recorded. So there may be some additional costs. Every time a document is recorded, there are recording fees that are going to be charged at closing, and we make sure that the documents are recorded in the right order and that all those fees are collected at the closing, and all of the documents that are required as part of that transaction are obtained in order to fund and disperse the property. I included the names of our closing teams, and in our it's really kind of exciting. Our Clayton office is actually adding an additional space. So we'll be in the same building, but we're going to be on the 9th floor starting in the middle of September. So I'll get, Lisa, I'll get you the new information. Then right now we're still in Suite 200, and we'll still have Suite 200, but we're also going to have Suite 950 as well.
Excellent. Yay.
Yay, I know.
Good. Okay, so let's, do we have any other questions for Wendy about title stuff, or about anything else there? It looks like we don't have anything new in the Q&A, so let's transfer over to Rob.
I do have some photos and stuff I can show. I can share my screen and we can take a look at some of those. And basically what I'm going to talk about is, first of all, I'm an architect. I'm with Urban Works Architects. We established ourselves. We are going to be 9 years old next week. And we have done in the neighborhood of 7 or 8 of, well, more than that, actually, probably in the neighborhood of 20 if you include some of the stuff that we did with that was stacked with other tax credit programs. But as far as CDA properties, we have worked with 3 different clients doing them. The first thing, as was stated earlier, is that there's going to be a list that comes out with the preferred properties. And I can show you as far as, let's see, I'll share my screen. This is, if everybody can see that, kind of what we start with. This is 3434 Michigan, and it has been complete now for 4 years. This was taken about 6 years ago. And as far as evaluating an existing property, what I always tell people is take a very good look around the entire thing, because they look pretty good from the front, and then you get around to the rear. And this is the kind of thing that we run across all the time, where the basically rear of the building is gone. These are fairly small buildings to begin with. Well, this one in particular was a fairly small building, and a total of 800 square feet. It was a shotgun. That's not a very marketable floor plan or style of house. It's not how we live today. So what we have to do is develop, first of all, a plan. And there we start with preliminaries. In this case, what we looked at here was that the rear of this building was not going to be able to be rehabilitated, but we had to maintain the front portion of it. So the entire back end of the building, which really wasn't that much, this was an addition, came off. And what we did was, as typical of buildings in the city, it was about 3.5 feet out of the ground. What we elected to do was maintain the roof height and the ceiling height throughout, which was about 9 feet, but actually drop the rear new portion of this building and have stairs down to it. So essentially, right in here, create a 12-foot tall space that would be the living area. And this evolved into our CDs. And when we got into CDs, things changed, as they tend to do. And you can see here's our demo plan as to what came off this building. And demo elevations as to what came off. And then the new plan, and you can see how that differs from what we were viewing earlier. There we go. So things shifted around and moved. We had to go through a review with CDA and CRO. There are neighborhood concerns, and depending on what neighborhood you're in, you're going to have to meet the local historic ordinances. The CRO ordinances are related to some of the historic ones you're going to find. You are going to be required to do a solid quality historic window on the front. And you are going to have to you're going to have to make sure that whatever renovation work you're doing is going to meet those requirements as far as replicating features, roof lines, materials. You're not going to be able to do vinyl siding on the front. You are going to have to replicate, if there's cornices, put those back as they were. CDA review is going to also include environmental concerns, which we have to meet Energy Star in these buildings, which requires additional levels of insulation. The U value on your windows is going to be above what normal builders use. At the end of the day, you're going to have a much more energy efficient building. And in some cases, we have actually stacked these along with MHDC credits and historic adaptive reuse credits, the state and federal tax credit. I do not recommend you do that. It really is a minefield of trying to find balance between the different requirements. Everyone, the rules start conflicting with each other, and it becomes kind of difficult to navigate. There is also Section 106 review, which is at the which is CDA's portion that involves street trees and other historic context. And at the end of the day, what you hope to do is go from something like this to something like that, which was the final product. This one turned out really nice, sold very fast. And you remember the rear?
We still have the plan, Rob.
Oh, I still do? Okay. Let me show you the. So that is what we started, what we ended up with, if you remember correctly. This is what we had started with. That's the final product. The rear that looked like this came out looking like that. And you can see we have the additional height in here, so we were able to do kind of a nice patio on the back and give it a contemporary look. It acts like a contemporary house. And let's see what else I got. So we're in the process right now of putting together applications for the next round. And this is kind of our typical application. So you can kind of see what we're starting with. This is actually a new build. This is on Church. Here's our new plans. If you've been dealing with this is new construction. If you're doing an empty lot, as long as it, it meets the kind of housing requirements that are mandated by the neighborhood, by the market. The most difficult thing that we found is some of the adaptive reuses, like 3434 Michigan. That was an 800 square foot original building. That's extremely small. That's basically a 1-bedroom. It's going to be very difficult to make that into a 2-bedroom. You usually need at least 900 square feet to do a 2-bedroom, and then it's got to be configured correctly. conversion of 2 families into single family homes works really nice, because usually they're 700 to about 1,000 square feet per unit. So you get a 1,400 to 2,000 square foot building. One of the things that was mentioned earlier that is that you really do need a good survey. 3434 Michigan, the one I showed you earlier, the actual footprint of the building was the existing building was over the property line. And so that required a visit to Board of Adjustment. We had to hold back our new addition as much as we could. We were still barely over the property line. We had to get a cross-access agreement with the neighbor. It's just something you got to account for time-wise. The surveys have to be done. It has to be replatted. And it's not uncommon in the city to have footprints of buildings come cross over into your neighbor's property line. In fact, that whole block on Michigan, every single house just about on it is, because the way it was platted and the way things were built are different. So that covers about everything I had.
Hey, Rob, what are the critical questions that a developer should be asking a potential architect when working on a CDA project? What should they be asking as they interview them?
As they interview them, I would make sure that, one, they've got experience dealing with the historic standards, that they understand those, that they kind of understand the timeline that you're dealing with, and kind of some of the steps that come about. Like I said, you go through a preliminary review. Well, you're going to put together the application. You're going to go through a preliminary review. You're going to respond to comments. You're going to resubmit, and it can get drawn out. Generally, the way this works a lot of times is the architect doesn't get paid until closing, because that's when there's money available. It's nice to throw them a little bit up front for services, just because there's some time commitment involved that really starts to cut into your bottom line if you're waiting on a payment at the end of a project. But the process is the main thing, is kind of and understanding how these older buildings work, as far as chances are what you're going to be dealing with is an all masonry building. It's on some of these smaller ones that are 1-story, they are actually double wide. That is rare. Most of them are triple wide. What is going to be required as far as remediation, which you're going to run across, what's going to be required as far as meeting is contemporary code versus how they are built. We've got property line issues with a lot of the development, where you have to really kind of work with the plan review and the IRC, which is the International Residential Code. St. Louis is under 2018, as far as making sure that you can meet the code or come to some compromise with the building department if you can't actually meet the letter of the code, which they are willing to do, but you have to be willing to bend. So it's not like doing kind of new construction where you're out in a green field and you're kind of doing one after the other. The sites are tight. The dimensions are always going to be tight. The demands for our technical performance are going to be a little bit more. So you want to get somebody who kind of understands those aspects and also understands historic architecture and making it work. You're going to run into structural problems. You're going to have joist ends that are bad. You're going to have, how do you handle that? You're going to run across, especially in demolition, some of these buildings I can't send anybody into until they're actually demolished, until actual interior demolition is complete, because they're too dangerous. So the chances of you running across a hidden stack or framing that completely is going a different direction from what your initial assumptions were. So your architect's going to be able to have to pivot and be able to come up with fast solutions that maybe are a little bit unorthodox sometimes compared to kind of conventional frame construction. So those are some of the aspects as far as hazards that you can run across when you're putting together one of these projects.
Cool. Well, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, so I guess you did a good job.
Thank you.
And let's, if you can go from there. Now it is Gail's turn. There she is.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and pull up the presentation here. Okay, can everyone see the screen there? Okay.
It looks good.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the role of the realtor in this development process. And it's been, I really like the order because you see the players and understand the pieces and what's important in the process. And we'll be reiterating some of those pieces as we go through. Just to tell you briefly who I am. Again, Gail Brown, St. Louis native, a real estate broker. Brown Court Camp Realty is my company. Many years of experience in the real estate field, industry, and sales, development, and investment, licensed in Missouri and Illinois. And I only mentioned the last two because I always like to connect with people from McAllister College or St. Louis University. So I just added that. What I would like to cover is just the role of the realtor as I see it. I see us being first a team member, part of that development team. I see us being advisors in the process. We are the people that will market. We are the salespeople for the development. We also are qualifiers. We're qualifying potential buyers for the development. And then we actually facilitate that transaction once a contract is solidified on a particular project. We see that from beginning to end. So that first step, just wanted to, just talk a little bit more about our collaboration. We talked about the various members on the team. We are a part of a team that generally consists of a basic group of the builder, the developer / consultant, who's pulling together that budget, making sure that that developer is meeting the criteria or the requirements of whatever funds you're seeking, whether it be CDA or other tax credits, other applications, affordable housing, trust fund, other they have the budget and they're making sure all the numbers work. So you always want a consultant that has expertise and is familiar with working with these various agencies and understand what is needed and how to communicate and navigate those waters. And then you have the developer / owner who is taking on all of the risk. The responsibility is coordinating as kind of the captain of the team, if you will. And then you have an architect, and we've gone over that. Rob went over that piece, our architect, and then the realtor. So we are a part of that team. And what do we do? As I said, we are advisors. I see our role as bringing information to the team. We're out there every single day working with consumers. And we're studying the real estate market, which we're understanding what is the demand for housing, what kind of housing consumers like, what are they interested in now, and bringing that information to the team so that we can produce the best possible product available out there. We're going to talk about the market, and that's going to help us determine the price. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? What is demand for housing in the area? And all of that information will determine how we price the property. So that's very important. We're working with the consultant. The consultant has a budget, and the number that we choose has to fit into the budget. It has to also make sense for the area. Will consumers purchase the property at the right price? We also have to be concerned with, if there are certain funds like CDA or other funds that may be involved from affordability standpoint. We have to make sure that it is affordable with the marketplace. Again, the market demands. And from all of that information, when we look at the property valuation, we're also going to be looking at comparables, what other properties are selling for in and around the area, what's currently on the market, what's our competition. And then we're going to lastly make design recommendations. What we're looking at and working with the architect and offering our suggestions and recommendations based on what we see buyers looking for in the industry. We may make recommendations about floor plans. Now with COVID, we may suggest additional live, work, and play space, a separate workspace. Now we see a trend working with a neighborhood organization, and it's important to them that the housing reflects a demographic that looks at aging in place. So you now can start maybe considering, with the city and some of our neighborhoods, we have a lot of 2 stories. So is there a way to create a bedroom on the first floor so that, the generation that doesn't want to go up and down the stairs, they can have a bedroom on the first floor, and then you have the remaining bedrooms on the second floor. But there's some handicap accessibility with a bedroom and a bath on the first floor. So that's a recommendation based on the trends that a realtor might make. When you look at, the primary role, as I see it, as a realtor, is to market the property. We are responsible for marketing the property in a way with the goal and intention that we're going to market that property at the best price, and we want to sell it as quickly as we can. Because when you look at this timeline, this, in reality is, maybe 6 months, in terms of development of, identification of the property, submitting that application, getting application approved, and now getting everything set up so that you can break ground on that piece of property. So time is of the essence. So it's very important that we create, as realtors, a marketing strategy to sell the property. And that will include your basic marketing that's needed at the very preliminary level of the multiple listing service, the social media, flyers, email blasts, word of mouth, neighborhood community outreach. And that's key because, people who are in the community, and especially in the city of St. Louis, there's, a lot of neighborhood pride. They want to remain in their communities, and when they see new construction going up, it's an opportunity for them to remain and have, a very nice piece of property within their neighborhood. So community outreach in neighborhoods, that's very important, as well as, as realtors, we all have, websites that we work with, and we want to make sure that it's showing up on the various websites so that the public has access to them, so they can just Google and that property will come up with all the pertinent information. Once we create an awareness of the property and we have buyers that are interested in the property, it's very important that we qualify the buyers, that we ensure that if we're going to contract with a buyer and tie the property up, we want to make sure that that buyer is ready, willing, and able to purchase. So we're going to review with them because it could be a first-time home buyer. So we're going to review with them the home buying process so they fully understand what is required to be a homeowner and what are the steps, what's involved, because we have to educate them that this is a new construction, and in many cases, what we will be contracting on will be the actual plans, because the property has yet to be completed. And in some cases, it has not. What you're selling are plans and designs and the architectural plans and the specifications, and that's what you're selling. So you have to educate the buyer and let them know that this now could be an additional 6 months, and you want to understand if they have the ability to take that time to allow the process to take place, because weather can happen, change in plans. So they have to have, if they contract, they have to know that this is not something that's going to happen in 30, 60, 90 days. This is perhaps a 6-month process. We also want to make sure before we put them on paper that they are qualified in terms of their financing. Do they need financing? Have they gotten pre-approved by a mortgage institution, bank? Are they working with cash? What are the requirements? Also, again, if this is affordable type of project, we have to look at their household income and make sure that they qualify based on the criteria of the funds that are being provided for the development. Uh-oh.
Okay,
So,
we got a couple of questions.
Oh, couple questions now, or you want me to wait? Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
let's hit this question real quickly.
Sure.
I think that appraisers were mentioned earlier. And so the question is, well, her question was, what is the relation to local appraisers, but how do appraisers fit into this process, and how does one choose one?
Okay. So how the appraiser fits into the process is that, we're going to, in order to determine the price, we're going to do the market analysis, and the developer may look at and have and hire an appraiser to, verify and confirm some as improved prices after construction. They want to confirm that this is a value that we can get after we construct. So the seller or the project owner may hire and engage an appraiser to do that. In some cases, it may be that they will allow the real estate professional to provide, a broker price opinion to make that determination. However, there are developers, and according to the criteria, it may be required that you engage and hire an appraiser to confirm the values that you're putting on the market. But once that property goes on the market and that price is set and we get a contract, if that buyer requires financing, it's going to be contingent, upon an appraisal being done and completed. And then that will be the role and responsibility of the lender to do that, that appraisal and confirm for that buyer that the property has the value that has been established. But if you're interested in appraising on the front end, my recommendation would be to reach out to the project owner and, ask if they are in need of an appraisal on the various projects.
Well, okay, so one of the things that we require in the NOFA is a market analysis. And and that's best if it's provided, it can be provided by a realtor. And actually, I think you've done some for us for that.
Yes.
But if they wanted to get an appraiser, how would they choose that person?
Oh, well, how they would choose that person, my recommendation would be that you ask a local realtor that has experience, in the field and understands the market that you're in, and then ask them, what appraiser do you work with that knows the city? And I'm really stressing that because you can, Google appraisers and you can find a lot of appraisers, but it's very important, in my opinion, that you hire an appraiser that is familiar with the community in which the project is being, constructed in. So you can ask for recommendations from people who work in that community.
Thank you. That's great.
Lastly, once we have a contract, we've done, the qualifications, we've written up the contract, we've negotiated between the buyer and the project owner. Our role is to process that transaction from that point to actually turning over the keys to the new property owner. So in every real estate transaction, there's a basic process. So, Wendy earlier talked about the title process for CDA, but there will be a second title process that we will submit our contract to the title company, because the lender and the buyer, they're going to want and need title insurance. So there's going to be a second examination of the title in preparation of title policies. We will work with the lenders to ensure that they have a copy of the contract, that they are going out and appraising it, because these properties are going to be used as collateral for the buyer's loan. So the lender will have certain requirements, and we'll coordinate that with them. It could be in certain neighborhoods that perhaps may require code compliancy. We'll work with the city and make sure that that happens and takes place, and just walk that buyer through the entire process to ensure that if they want to get a building inspections, I tell people that, yes, this is a new construction in every property. You need to know how your property works. And things, even in new construction, could come up. So perhaps you may want a building inspection of a new property. So we walk with them throughout the process to make sure that they understand and that they get to the finish line, which is the closing of the settlement, and we can turn over the keys. And then there's a celebration. So that is all I have for right now. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Well, and actually Wendy noted the same thing that you were just talking about the appraiser, that the lenders very often do have appraisers as well. And that's a good way to go, since the lender and the title company are going to have to deal with the value issue on the backside.
Yes.
Do we have questions for our panel group that we haven't covered or haven't?
Yeah, and Lisa, I just wanted to be clear, you two are absolutely right, is because the lender, the buyer can't pick their own appraiser once it gets to the contract phase, because it's a conflict of interest. So the lender will select the appraiser in that sense.
Yeah, but at the front end, to establish the market value of the proposed development.
Right, right.
That's so. Roy asked, he says, "This is great information. Will we be able to retrieve this recording again?" And the answer to that question is yes, you will. And the place to look for that is on the website where you've been going to get into the developer round. I'm sorry, into the Zoom. We'll make sure that link is there again for you next week. So for all of you would-be developers who have sat through our series to this point, we will have some real live developers who have gone through this process. Next week, we'll have 3 of them sitting at our virtual table. They'll have a little bit to say, but they will be ready for your questions. So you have homework this week. Put together some questions. What questions do you have for developers about this experience? What do you want to know? Okay. And the other note that I've got here is, don't forget that this year, for the first time, we're doing practice applications, so that we hope we have a little more first-time success for folks. And those practice applications will be due October 15th at 4 p.m. But we want to work with you through the process, so reach out to us if you're going to do one. And this is where to find me. We will be putting this back out on the website where we've been putting it. We'll make sure that the CDA NOFO email sends that to you so that you've got the link, and we'll go from there. One last call for questions. Anyone? Ah, we have one. What is Rob's? Okay, and ask for a contact number. We'll get that to you later. Okay, so with that, we will sign off. We thank y'all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next week.